When I think about teachers who have influenced me, I always think of Mrs. Miller. She was my third grade teacher, and I was at the time living in Munich, Germany. I went to Munich International School, and people always ask, "Was your dad in the military?" And I said, "No, he was in pharmaceutical sales." And so I went to Munich International School, and two things Mrs. Miller did is it changed my life forever. So I was not a good student, never was. I struggled to read, and but I remember I was fascinated with pirates, and I was interested in writing because I had a big imagination, but I didn't really know how to. And so I remember writing a pirate story, and I remember after that pirate story, she just wrote in my journal, she said, "Great job, keep writing." And I think there were some exclamation points as well. And that encouragement lit a fire. That was in third grade. I wanted to become a writer, and that never changed. And so, many years later, I've been a full-time writer since 2007. I've gotten over 100 books published. Some are mine, some have been co-written, ghost-written. But when I think of Mrs. Miller, I think of that encouragement. The other thing she did, I remember she read to us from the C.S. Lewis Narnia Chronicles, and I remember Lion Witch in the Wardrobe, and she'd read some of that every day at lunchtime. And that's why I wanted to be a writer. I was like, man, I would love to do that. I would love to come up with stories like that and adventures. And I never stopped writing. I still have that pirate story in my possession. I have every single thing I've ever written as if someday there's going to be like a Travis Thrasher museum, and pretty much so much of it, especially when I was a kid, it's terrible, but I kept it all. But yeah, that Mrs. Miller, and I only lived in Munich from second to fourth grade, and then I proceeded to go to I still moved around quite a bit, but I remember in North Carolina, I was living there in ninth grade, and that's when I wrote my first official novel. All the way through, I wrote it on paper, pencil and paper. Still have it. It's a terrible book, but the biggest thing I always say is I completed it, and that changed everything for me because I was like, you know what? When you finish something, especially if you're a writer and you finish a book, you can always fix it up, or you can always write another one. So I always think of Mrs. Miller. One day I hope to be able to thank her. I still have never connected with her yet, but maybe someone somewhere out there knows Mrs. Miller. So